It happens very often that twin tube shock absorbers are pressurized. Pressurized means that during the manufacturing or remanufacturing, some nitrogen is introduced into the shock absorber and remains between the guide and the oil into the chamber. The gas has many effects. One of them is to press the oil in and then into the inner cylinder, avoiding the static oil gap. Then, because the pressure, it reduces or eliminates or prevents the foaming of air or gas with the oil. If the damping forces are not too much high and the gas pressure is high enough, it avoids or prevents cavitation, especially in rebound under the piston. Or if any cavitation, the bubbles collapse faster. In certain cases, gas is also used in order to prevent the dynamic oil gap, because on certain OEs, the calibrator of the bottom valve is too big in comparison with the calibrator of the piston. And without gas, it would create dynamic oil gap and noise. In order to reduce it or to prevent it, the shock absorber is pressurized. In my opinion, this solution is not good. The shock absorber should have any dynamic oil gap in order to work properly even without gas. And this because the gas can escape from the shock absorber and the shock absorber to get noisy after 1 to 3 months working. Finally, the gas has the advantage that once you enter the gas, you can say that your shock absorber is a gas shock absorber. And you can sell a twin tube shock absorber as a gas shock absorber as it would be a monotube shock absorber. But of course, this is not a technical aspect, so I prefer do not touch it. Now, how to put the gas on a twin tube shock absorber? There are mainly 2 ways. One is to use this gas injector that must be introduced along the rod press it into the rod, into the oil seal, and pressurize it with nitrogen. The other solution could be to use button system. But since more difficult, we will explain it in another movie. A question that is quite common is which is the right pressure of the gas in a twin tube shock absorber. Let's say that there isn't any value that is always right for each kind of shock absorber. But the rules are more or less this. First of all, the shock absorber must be able to work properly without noise, without making noise, even without gas. It means that the bottom valve in compression must be harder than the piston in compression. And this thanks to small calibrators into the bottom valve and large calibrators in the piston. Second, if we put the pressure depends on the diameter of the rod, because with big rods we risk to increase too much the pressure. So in theory, when we have big diameters, we should have lower pressures. But it also depends on the piston, because smaller is the piston and higher should be the pressure in order to avoid cavitation under the piston. But later depends also on damping forces, because higher are damping forces and bigger is the risk of cavitation under the piston, so higher should be the pressure of the gas. So the common rules says that if you have a small rod around 12 millimeters, you should use high pressures like 4 or 5 bars and reduce the pressure to 2 or 3 bars if the rod is around 22 millimeters. And higher is the rebound force, the rebound damping, higher should be the pressure. Since when you have bigger rods, you also have big pistons and the car is quite heavy and the damping forces are very high, at the end you are forced to use high pressures even with big rods. So at the end, to work with 4 or 5 bars is never wrong. In any case, consider that the pressure will decrease quite quickly in the time, because the oil seals of dual tube shock absorbers do not seal like a monotube one, that is also where oil and gas are separated by an O-ring. Thank you.